Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are going to be exploring a topic that I find really fascinating.
Oh, me too.
It's how culture can shape our brains.
Yeah,
We've got a really interesting collection of academic articles and research all about cultural neuroscience for this deep dive,
right.
like how everything from perception to mental health is intertwined with the cultures that we live in.
Yeah, it really challenges that traditional view of the brain as fixed.
Mhm.
Instead, we're seeing that the brain is so adaptable, so plastic,
Right.
constantly changing based on our experiences, especially our cultural experiences.
So instead of just thinking about our brains in terms of biology,
Yeah,
we're adding in this whole other layer of culture.
exactly.
So what exactly is cultural neuroscience?
Well, it's really a fascinating field. It brings together neuroscience and anthropology.
Okay.
We're looking at how cultural factors, our environment, the things we do, the things we believe, influence the very structure and function of our brains.
Okay, I am intrigued. What kind of surprising things are we talking about here?
Well, we'll see how people in different cultures perceive optical illusions differently.
Wait, really?
Oh, yeah.
They see things differently based on their culture.
Let's take the Muller-Lyer illusion.
Oh.
It's that classic one where you have two lines that are the same length, but because of the arrows on the end, one looks longer than the other.
Oh, right. Yeah. I
Exactly.
remember that one.
Studies have shown that people from cultures with less exposure to carpentered environments, we're talking about like South African miners or the San people,
Okay.
they're less susceptible to this illusion.
Huh.
Their experience with the world shapes how their brains interpret those lines.
That's fascinating. So even something as basic as visual perception,
Right.
it isn't purely biological.
Yeah.
It's influenced by our surroundings, our cultural surroundings.
It highlights just how much our environment interacts with our brain's development.
Okay.
Another amazing example is echolocation.
Like bats.
Exactly. Blind humans can learn to see the world through sound.
Wow.
They make these clicking sounds,
Okay.
use the echoes to map their surroundings, just like bats.
Are you telling me there are people who can navigate the world using echoes?
Yes. There's an organization called World Access for the Blind that teaches these techniques.
Mm.
And one of the founders, Daniel Kish, he can ride a bike, he can hike, he can even play basketball, all using echolocation.
That's unbelievable. What does that tell us about the brain?
It demonstrates the brain's remarkable plasticity.
Okay.
So, in these expert echolocators, the visual cortex, the part of the brain that's usually dedicated to sight, it gets repurposed to process sound information.
So the brain isn't just this static organ. It's
Right.
constantly adapting based on what we're experiencing.
Precisely. And this rewiring, it happens throughout our lives, shaped by so many factors, including the cultures we are immersed in.
This is really making me rethink how I understand the brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's like our experiences, especially our cultural ones, are sculpting our neural pathways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is evident in how we experience and express emotions, too.
Okay, I'm guessing different cultures have different ways of showing emotions.
It goes deeper than that.
Okay.
A study comparing Chinese and American participants showed that while both groups reported feeling strong emotions,
Okay.
they described them differently.
I wonder if this relates to cultural norms around expressing emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, perhaps one culture encourages more outward displays and another values keeping emotions internal.
That's a great observation. And the study actually found that Americans tended to describe emotions using physical sensations, like my heart raced or I felt butterflies. The Chinese participants, however, focused more on the social context
Oh, interesting.
and how their emotions affected others.
So they weren't feeling emotions differently, but the way they processed and expressed them
Yeah.
was shaped by their cultural upbringing.
And this cultural difference was reflected in their brain activity, too.
Really?
Yeah, Americans showed more activation in brain areas linked to processing bodily sensations, while Chinese participants showed more activity in areas associated with social cognition.
So culture isn't just this abstract concept.
Right.
It literally shapes our neurology.
It does. It demonstrates that.
This is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So culture is almost like a lens
Mm-hmm.
through which we experience and express our emotions.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
And these cultural lenses extend to how we use and perceive language as well.
I can imagine different languages having different words for things.
Right.
But how does that affect the brain?
Well, Language goes far beyond just vocabulary.
Okay.
The way we use language is intertwined with our cultural values and practices.
So it's not just about the words themselves.
Right.
It's about the cultural meaning embedded in how we use them.
Precisely.
Oh.
The ritual speech coevolution theory suggests that language evolved alongside rituals, with early humans developing gestures and vocalizations to coordinate those rituals. These sounds eventually became more complex, leading to language as we know it.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it suggests that language isn't just about conveying information,
Right.
but it's also about creating a shared experience, reinforcing cultural norms.
Exactly. Think
Yeah.
about anthropologist Victor Turner's concept of anti-structure.
Okay.
It's this idea of how rituals allow us to temporarily step outside of our normal social roles
Right.
and experience a different reality.
Yeah.
Language plays a crucial role in creating and shaping these experiences.
So in a way, rituals and language create a shared cultural space
Yeah,
that shapes our understanding of the world.
you're getting it. It highlights how language,
Yeah.
shaped by culture, doesn't just convey information, but shapes our social interactions and ultimately influences our neural pathways.
So even something as fundamental as language
Yeah.
is deeply intertwined with culture
Mhm.
and shapes our brains.
It does.
This is truly making me rethink everything I thought I knew.
And we're just getting started.
Okay, bring it on.
We'll see how this cultural lens impacts our sense of self, our mental health, and even how we interact with others.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's fascinating. Even our sense of self, who we believe ourselves to be, is shaped by those cultural values we grew up with.
Oh, wow. I can see how our culture might, influence our personality or values.
Uh-huh.
But does it really impact our sense of self on a neurological level?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about individualism and collectivism.
Okay.
Cultures that emphasize individualism, it's often reflected even in their language, tend to prioritize personal achievements, independence.
Whereas collectivist cultures value things like group harmony and interdependence.
Exactly. And studies have shown that these cultural values, often reinforced through language,
Right.
can actually influence brain activity.
Wow.
When asked to think about themselves, people from individualistic cultures, they tend to show more activity in brain regions that are associated with self-processing.
So they're literally thinking about themselves in a different way because of their culture.
In a sense, yes.
Huh.
People from collectivist cultures, on the other hand, they show more activity in brain regions related to social processing when thinking about their families or communities.
Okay.
Their sense of self is more intertwined with their social groups.
It's amazing to think that even our understanding of who we are
Yeah.
is influenced by our culture, right down to how our brains function.
It highlights how deeply culture is ingrained in us, and this brings us to another really crucial area: mental health.
Okay.
The way we understand and treat mental health disorders is also deeply intertwined with cultural factors.
Yeah, that makes sense. Different cultures probably have different ways of thinking about mental illness.
Precisely. For example, to understand PTSD in the context of apartheid in South Africa,
Okay.
you need a deep understanding of that unique cultural trauma experienced by people who lived through it.
Hmm.
The symptoms, the coping mechanisms, even the stigma surrounding mental illness are all shaped by the cultural context.
So it's not just about diagnosing a disorder based on like a universal checklist of symptoms.
Right.
We need to consider the cultural factors that influence how those symptoms are experienced and expressed.
Exactly. Cultural neuroscience reminds us that mental health isn't solely about brain chemistry.
Okay.
It's about this complex interplay between our brains, our experiences, and our cultures. And this understanding is so vital for developing culturally sensitive and effective treatments.
This is all so eye-opening. It feels like cultural neuroscience is giving us this whole new framework for understanding the human experience.
It is.
What about how we interact with others? Does culture play a role there too?
Absolutely. One of the most powerful insights from cultural neuroscience is that even something as basic as how we perceive and interact with other people is shaped by our culture.
Oh, okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about this cultural lens on social behavior.
Well, think about the concept of in-group versus out-group. We naturally form groups based on shared characteristics, whether it's ethnicity, nationality, even shared interests.
Right, the classic us versus them.
Exactly.
Seems like a pretty fundamental part of human nature.
It is. But what's fascinating is how culture shapes those group dynamics.
Okay.
Some cultures, often those with a history of conflict or competition for resources, tend to have stronger in-group preferences and may even show bias against out-groups.
So our cultural background can actually influence how we perceive and treat people from different groups.
Absolutely. Studies have shown that people from cultures with a strong emphasis on group loyalty,
Okay.
they might show more activity in brain regions associated with threat detection
Oh, wow.
when interacting with someone from an outgroup.
So, like, their brains are primed to be more cautious, wary.
It's as if, yeah, it's
Okay.
not necessarily about like conscious prejudice. It's
Right.
more about how our brains have evolved to navigate social complexities, potential threats within our specific cultural environments.
It makes you wonder, can these ingrained biases be rewired?
Yeah.
Like, if the brain is so adaptable, is there a way to train it to be more inclusive?
That's one of the most exciting areas of research right now.
Oh, really?
There's growing evidence that interventions focused on empathy and perspective taking
Okay.
can actually reduce in-group bias and promote more positive intergroup relations.
So there's hope for overcoming these deeply ingrained prejudices.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Cultural neuroscience shows us that our brains are capable of change.
That's encouraging.
By understanding the neural mechanisms behind bias, we can develop strategies to promote understanding and cooperation across cultural divides.
That's a powerful thought.
It is
This entire conversation has been incredibly thought-provoking.
Mm,
It really underscores how much we're all connected,
wow.
not just through, like, our shared humanity,
Right.
but through these intricate cultural webs that shape our brains and our societies.
Exactly. We're all products of our cultures, and by understanding those cultures, we can unlock a deeper understanding of ourselves and each other. It's about recognizing and celebrating the beautiful diversity of the human experience.
And with that understanding comes a responsibility
Right.
to use this knowledge wisely, to build a world where everyone can thrive, regardless of their cultural background.
I couldn't agree more. Cultural neuroscience challenges us to move beyond like simplistic explanations
Right.
and embrace the incredible complexity of what it means to be human.
Wow.
It's a call to action to create a world where diversity is celebrated and every brain has the opportunity to reach its full potential.
What a powerful message, and what a fascinating deep dive into cultural neuroscience.
Yeah,
We've covered so much ground.
we have.
It feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
It's a field that's constantly evolving, revealing new insights into this dynamic relationship between our brains and our cultures.
Right.
There's always more to learn and discover.
So for all our listeners out there, here's a little challenge.
Okay.
Step outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Explore a new culture, learn a new language, try a new cuisine.
Mm-hmm.
You might just be surprised at how it rewires your brain and expands your horizons.
I remember this learning and adaptation isn't limited to just our early years.
Right.
The brain remains adaptable throughout our lives.
Okay.
It's never too late to embrace new experiences and allow your culture and your brain to continue evolving.
I love that.
Yeah.
Cultural neuroscience shows us we're not just passive recipients of our cultures.
Uh-huh.
We're active participants, shaping them, and in turn, shaping our own brains.
It's a beautiful, intricate dance that continues throughout our lives. And the more we understand this dance,
Yeah.
the more we can create a world where every brain, every culture has the opportunity to flourish.
That's a truly inspiring message to leave our listeners with.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of cultural neuroscience. It's been a truly mind-expanding journey.
Right.
You know, it's amazing to think that something as complex as culture can literally shape our brains.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen how it influences everything from how we perceive the world around us
Right.
to how we understand our own identities.
And this understanding has profound implications for so many areas of life. Education, healthcare, social justice.
Right.
It really challenges us to rethink how we approach these issues.
One thing that really struck me is how this research challenges that idea that we're just products of our genes. You know, it turns out our environment, especially our cultural environment, plays a much bigger role than we might have thought.
It's not nature versus nurture.
Right.
It's nature and nurture working together in this really intricate dance.
Yeah.
Our genes, they provide the blueprint, but it's our experiences, particularly our cultural experiences, that shape how that blueprint is expressed.
So it's like we're all born with these incredible adaptable brains
Yeah.
that are ready to be molded by the cultures that we live in.
Exactly. Think of it like learning a musical instrument.
Right.
We all have the potential to play music, but it's the practice, the training, the cultural context that transforms that potential into a beautiful symphony.
So the more we expose ourselves to different cultures, the more we're essentially expanding our own neural repertoire.
That's a fantastic way to put it.
Well,
It's like learning a new language.
yeah,
Every language we learn opens up this whole new way of seeing the world, of thinking, of feeling,
it does.
cultural immersion.
Yeah.
It's a form of brain training,
Yeah.
expanding our understanding and capacity for empathy.
So for everyone listening out there, here's a little challenge.
Okay, I like it.
Step outside your comfort zone,
Yeah.
explore a new culture,
Mm-hmm.
learn a new language, try new cuisine.
I love it.
You might just be surprised at how it rewires your brain and
Yeah.
expands your horizons.
And remember, this learning and adaptation,
Yeah.
it's not limited to just our early years.
Okay.
The brain remains adaptable throughout our lives.
Wow.
It's never too late to embrace new experiences and allow your culture and your brain to continue to evolve.
Cultural neuroscience shows us we're not just passive recipients of our cultures,
Right.
we're active participants, shaping them,
Yeah.
and in turn, shaping our own brains.
It's this beautiful, intricate dance that continues throughout our lives.
Mhm.
And the more we understand this dance, the more we can create a world where every brain, every culture has the opportunity to flourish.
That's a truly inspiring message to leave our listeners with.
It is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating world of cultural neuroscience.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been a truly mind-expanding journey.